Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves on the deck of a Portuguese caravel in the year 1520. Feel the rough, salt-crusted wood beneath your feet. The air is thick with the smell of tar and the endless ocean. Above you, the massive canvas sails snap in the wind, the only sound besides the groan of the ship's timbers as it cuts through the dark waves of the Atlantic. You're leaving the known world behind, sailing right off the edge of the map into mystery. Statistically speaking, the mysterious wasting disease we now call scurvy would almost certainly claim you long before you ever saw land again. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. I'd love to see where everyone is tuning in from tonight, so drop your city and local time in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see our community span the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The 10th of August, 1520. Your first entry. The 7 hills of Lisbon have melted into the horizon, and with them, the last vestiges of the world you know. Your cabin is a small, wooden womb, smelling of pine resin and the sea. The King's Charter, the very document that gives this voyage its purpose, lies sealed in the captain's quarters. It speaks of trade, of glory for Portugal, of finding a new route to the riches of the Maluku Islands. But your purpose is written not on a royal decree, but on the empty pages of this journal, to see, to document, and perhaps to understand, to replace the monsters drawn on the edges of old maps with truth, if the sea allows it. The first weeks are a study in rhythm. The sun rises, the watches change, the sails are trimmed, the deck is scrubbed. You learn the ship's language, the groan of the mainmast under strain, the sharp snap of canvas catching the wind, the soft lapping of waves against the hull during a calm. This cramped, floating piece of Portugal becomes your entire world, and you begin to study its inhabitants as you would any new species. There is Capitão Gomes de Almeida, a man who seems fused to the quarterdeck. His beard is salted with grey, but trimmed with the precision of a military man, and his deep-set eyes, surrounded by a web of fine lines, rarely leave the horizon, as if he can read the future in the line where the blue of the sea meets the blue of the sky. He is a figure of quiet, absolute authority, his posture always rigid, his presence a constant weight. Then there is Piloto Pedro, the old pilot. His hands are gnarled like old driftwood, yet they handle his delicate astrolabe with impossible gentleness. The sun has bleached his hair the colour of bone, and his face, a roadmap of wrinkles, seems to hold the memory of every storm he's ever weathered. He is a man of practical magic, surrounded by his charts and his sand glasses, speaking of the sea not as a body of water, but as a living creature. In a quiet corner of the deck, often sheltered from the wind, sits Isabella de Castro. Her dark hair is practically tied back with a simple leather cord to keep it from the ocean breeze, and her fingers are perpetually smudged with ink. She isn't beautiful in the way of courtly ladies. Her features are too sharp, her gaze too intense for that. She is the expedition's cartographer, a mind as sharp as the nib of her pen. You sometimes exchange a quiet, knowing glance 2 islands of scholarly pursuit in an ocean of brute force and superstition. And you learn to give a wide berth to Gaspar, the lead mercenary. He has the thick build of a tavern brawler, and a jagged scar on his shaved head speaks of a violent past. His eyes are small and watchful, constantly assessing the men around him not as shipmates, but as potential threats or victims. He and his men are a different breed, passing the time gambling with dice made from bone, their laughter sharp and dangerous. Gaspar keeps his sword polished to a mirror sheen, a constant, silent reminder that the king's law is a distant memory out here. This is your floating kingdom, a fragile society of soldiers, sailors, and scholars, adrift in the vast emptiness. The rhythm of the ship is a constant companion, a slow, rocking cradle. But today, that rhythm is shattered. A cry from the crow's nest slices through the midday heat. Hooked, a big one, the deck, moments before a picture of monotonous labor, explodes into life. Men drop their tools, their bare feet thudding on the hot planks as they rush to the starboard side. You make your way through the throng, drawn by the raw energy of the moment. A dozen men have their hands on a single, thick rope, glistening and taut as a bowstring. Their knuckles are white, their muscles bunched and straining, their faces grimacing with effort. They haul in unison, a guttural chant erupting from their chests with every pull. You follow the line out to sea, and see the water churning violently. A dark, powerful shape moves just beneath the surface, a blur of muscle and fury fighting against the pull. For a moment, the men gain ground, and the creature is dragged closer. It breaks the surface, and a collective gasp runs through the crew. It's a tiger shark, but it is unlike any drawing or description you have ever encountered. It is a living engine of primeval power, longer than two men laid end to end. Its immense body writhes, sending arcs of white spray across the deck. Its skin is a slate-grey canvas of darker stripes, rough and ancient-looking. It thrashes its head from side to side, and you catch a terrifying glimpse of its mouth, rows upon rows of serrated teeth. But it's the eye that freezes you. Black, vacant, and utterly devoid of fear or pain. It is the eye of a killer. The fight is brutal. The shark dives deep, pulling the line so taut it sings with tension, nearly dragging two men overboard. Then it surges, throwing its colossal weight into the air before crashing back down, the impact vibrating through the hull of the ship. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, its struggles begin to weaken. With one last coordinated heave, the crew drags it over the railing. It lands on the deck with a sickening wet slap that echoes like a cannon shot. For a moment, there is only the sound of heavy breathing and the rhythmic twitching of the shark's massive tail. Then, the tension breaks, and a wild cheer erupts from the men, their relief and triumph echoing across the empty waves. To them, it is a monster conquered. To you, it is a miracle. A perfect specimen. You approach the group, your medical kit in hand, which also holds your finest dissecting blades. An incredible catch, you say, your voice barely concealing your excitement. Once it has expired, I must study it. We know so little of these creatures. The cheering dies down. The men look from you to the shark, and then to Piloto Pedro. Knowledge? He rasps. This is no creature for your books, Doctor. This is a bad omen. A demon of the deep. To cut it open is to invite its curse upon this ship. A murmur of agreement ripples through the crew. You see their excitement curdle into suspicion. That's just superstition, Pedro, you counter. It's a fish, a remarkable one. Understanding its nature can only help us. You understand with your ink, Doctor, he shoots back. We understand with our blood. You turn to the one man whose authority matters. Capitan Almeida stands by the helm, his expression cold and unreadable. Captain, you plead. This is a rare opportunity for science. The captain is silent for a long moment, his eyes scanning the faces of his fearful crew. I care about the nature of my crew's morale more than the nature of a fish, he says finally, his voice low and firm. We need unity, not curses. He turns to the men. Take what meat you can and give the rest back to the sea. Now. His order is final. Your shoulders slump in defeat. The men hack crude stakes from the shark's flank and heave the mutilated creature back over the side. It sinks into the blue depths, taking all its secrets with it. And so, your first lesson at sea is not in navigation or biology, but in politics. You are a man of reason in a floating kingdom ruled by fear. They threw away a library of knowledge today, all to appease a phantom. You fear it is not the last library they will be willing to burn on this voyage. The 2nd of September, 1520. 3 weeks have passed since the shark incident. An uneasy peace has settled over the ship, the kind that feels more like a held breath than a state of calm. You have fallen into the ship's rhythm, a routine dictated by the sun and the sails. Days are spent observing the sea life, sketching flying fish with Isabella, and holding quiet, informal clinics for the sailors' various aches and ailments. You've started to feel a fragile sense of place here, a purpose. You document, you observe, you heal. It is a simple, scholarly existence, but you have learned that on this ship, simplicity is a luxury, and peace is merely the pause between storms. The eruption, when it comes, is sudden and ugly. It doesn't start with a roar, but with a low, venomous argument near the forecastle, where Gaspar's soldiers are gambling. You hear the slap of dice against a wooden crate, Then a voice raised in accusation, thick with anger. It's followed by the scrape of a bench and a guttural cry. You look up from your journal to see two sailors locked in a clumsy, desperate scuffle. It's not a noble fight. It's a tangle of flailing limbs and furious curses over a few silver coins. One man has a bloody nose, the other has a torn shirt. Gaspar and his mercenaries watch with amusement, making bets on the outcome. The fragile piece of the ship is shattered. Before the first proper punch can land, a shadow falls over them. Capitan Almeida has moved from the quarterdeck, with a silence that is more terrifying than a shout. His presence is enough. The fight freezes, the two men panting, their anger instantly replaced by stark fear. The captain does not ask who started it. He does not ask what it was about. He simply looks at the two of them, then at the silent crew who have gathered to watch. "The articles are clear," he says, his voice cutting through the humid air. "No brawling amongst the crew. You have endangered the order of this vessel." He points to the mainmast. "Tie them. There is no trial, no defense, just the sentence." Gaspar's men, grinning now, roughly seize the two sailors and lash their wrists to the solid wood of the mast. Their backs exposed to the crew and the Sunday, you feel a cold knot form in your stomach. You see the boatswain approach with the Cato ninetails, a whip of 9 knotted leather cords, each one tipped with a small lead weight. This isn't discipline, it's butchery. You step forward, your medical duty compelling you to speak. "Captain," you say, your voice calm but clear, "with all due respect, this punishment is dangerously severe. 20 lashes with the cat. In this heat, the wounds will fester within hours. A man could be crippled, lose the use of his back. It serves no purpose to lose 2 able-bodied sailors to infection." Capitan Almeida turns his head slowly to face you. His eyes are like chips of flint. He is not angry. He is something far colder. He is absolute. "Doctor," he says, his voice dangerously low, "I am tending to the health of this ship. You are merely tending to the health of its limbs. I will cut off a limb to save the body, without hesitation. There will be order. This is the only medicine that works for the disease of indiscipline. That is my final word on the matter." He turns away, a clear dismissal. You are powerless. You stand among the silent crew, forced to watch as the boatswain takes his stance. The only sound is the whistle of the whip through the air, followed by a sickening wet crack as it strikes flesh, and a man's choked gasp. One lash, then another, and another. You clinically observe the damage, your mind cataloguing the deep, parallel welts that quickly turn from red to purple. The skin breaking, the blood welling up and tracing paths down their backs. When it is over, the two men hang limply from their bonds, their backs a horrifying tapestry of raw, bleeding flesh. "Cut them down," the captain orders. "Doctor, see to your duty." You approach as they are laid face down on the deck. The smell of sweat and blood hangs heavy in the air. With Isabella quietly bringing you fresh water and linen, you set to work. This is no longer the clean world of theory and anatomy from your university days. This is the messy reality of human suffering. You carefully clean the grit and filth from the deep lacerations, your hands steady despite the tremor of anger you feel inside. One of the sailors, the younger one, looks back at you, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and gratitude. He whispers a hoarse, "Thank you." You simply nod, your throat too tight to speak. Later that night, you write in your journal by the light of a swaying lantern, the 2nd of September. "Today, I learned the difference between law and order. Law is a set of principles. Order, on this ship, is the quiet that follows a scream. The captain does not enforce the king's law. He enforces his own. He is the physician of this ship's soul, and his cure is fear. My role, I see now, is not just to fight the diseases of the body that nature sends our way. It is to patch up the wounds inflicted by the very man who commands us all. I am not just a doctor. I am a repairman for a brutal machine." The 5th of October, 1520. It has been a month since the flogging, and the scars on the sailors' backs have healed into pale, jagged lines. But the ship carries a deeper wound. The easy camaraderie of the early voyage is gone, replaced by a sullen, watchful silence. The captain's law of iron brought order. but it murdered morale. And now, nature has imposed a new kind of tyranny. For 19 days, not a breath of wind has touched our sails. The sea is a sheet of molten glass, the sun a merciless eye in a bleached white sky. We are adrift in a profound and terrible silence, a perfect prison from which there is no escape. The world has been reduced to this floating piece of timber, and the heat is beginning to bake the sanity from us all. The days bleed into one another, each one a mirror of the last. The ship's timbers, no longer flexing to the rhythm of the waves, bake and crack in the heat. The tar in the seams grows soft and sticky. The monotonous work continues, but it is a ghost of a routine. The men move slowly, their bodies slick with sweat, their eyes hollow. The real trouble, as it so often does, begins in the gut. The water in the great wooden casks has turned. When you draw a cup, it is lukewarm and tinged with a faint brown, with a slick, foul-smelling film on the surface. It tastes of wood, rot, and despair. Then the sickness starts. It begins with a young sailor named Matteo, a quiet boy you'd often seen carving seabirds from scraps of wood. First, the stomach cramps that double him over, then the debilitating flux dysentery. Within a week, 5 more men are afflicted. They lie in the cramped, suffocating space below deck, too weak to move, their groans a new, wretched addition to the ship's chorus of sounds. You know what you must do. This is not a curse or a trial. It is a contagion, passed through the contaminated water and the close quarters. You request an audience with the captain, your mind clear with the grim certainty of your science. You find him on the quarterdeck, staring out at the glassy sea. "Captain," you begin, your tone urgent but respectful. The sickness is spreading. It is the water. I have a 3-point plan. First, we must boil every drop of water before it is drunk. It will kill the impurities. He turns his head slowly, his eyes narrowed against the glare. We have a finite supply of firewood, Doctor. You want us to burn it just to heat our water. It is better than dying of thirst while surrounded by it, you press on. Second, the sick must be isolated. We can rig an awning on the foredeck, keep them in the open air, away from the healthy crew, to leave them on the deck like pariahs, to display our weakness for any passing ship to see. Number, we show solidarity. We do not cast our men out. It's not casting them out, it's containment. You insist, your frustration rising. Finally, the cook must observe the strictest hygiene. This is how we fight it. Captain Almeida listens to you, but his expression does not change. He is looking at the same facts, but seeing a completely different story. The wind does not blow. The water turns foul. Men weaken, he says, his voice flat. This is one trial, Doctor, sent by God to test our resolve. We will face it not by wasting our resources on your theories, but with prayer and fortitude. He turns to the rest of the deck. Tonight, he bellows, and every night, until the wind returns, the entire crew will assemble for evening prayers. We will ask God for deliverance. And so begins the war of 2 medicines. While the captain leads the nightly ritual on the main deck, the crew's desperate, chanting voices rising into the humid, star-filled sky, you wage your own quiet battle below. You sit with the sick, wiping their brows, forcing them to drink what little clean water you can save. Isabella, seeing the futility of the captain's approach, risks his wrath by helping you. She distracts the quartermaster while you sneak a small kettle from the galley, allowing you to boil just enough water for the weakest of the men. Your logic is sound, Doctor, she whispers to you one evening, as you work by the dim light of a single lantern. But the captain's logic is simpler. It is easier to pray for a miracle than it is to boil an ocean. That night, the sound of sick men groaning on one side of a thin wooden wall and the sound of desperate prayers on the other becomes the new rhythm of the ship. You write in your journal, the 24th of October, I am fighting a 2-front war. Below deck, I fight a microscopic enemy I cannot see. Above deck, I fight a faith so absolute it has become blind. The captain believes he is shepherding his flock, but a shepherd who mistakes a cliff for a pasture will lead all of his sheep to their doom. I do not know which is more deadly, the pestilence in our water barrels or the certainty in our captain's mind. The 1st of December, 1,520. The winds have returned, but they have brought no relief. They feel not like a blessing, but like a cold breath hurrying us toward our graves. The dysentery has waned, leaving the crew weakened, but now a new plague has taken its place. It is a slower, more insidious enemy, a creeping rot from within. You have read of it, of course, the dreaded scurvy. But to read the clinical descriptions is nothing compared to witnessing it. It is the disease of ghosts, draining the life from men while they still walk the decks. It begins as a profound weariness, a lethargy so deep that the simplest tasks become monumental efforts. Then, the signs become unmistakable. You see it in the sallow, waxy skin of the sailors. You see it in their gums, which swell and turn a dark, bruised purple, their teeth loosening in their sockets. Worst of all, old wounds begin to reopen. A scar on a man's arm from a knife fight years ago splits open, weeping as if the injury were fresh. The body is unmaking itself, its very fabric coming undone. Your most heart-wrenching case is the young sailor Tiago. Once so full of life, he now lies listlessly in his hammock, his skin pale, his eyes sunken. He can no longer keep down the hardtack biscuit, and he winces in pain with every slight movement. He looks at you with a silent, pleading terror that haunts you more than any storm. You spend your nights hunched over your medical texts by the light of a single sputtering candle. The established treatments are useless. Bloodletting only weakens the men further. But then you find it. Not in a respected medical treatise, but in the obscure journal of a captain from a prior voyage. It's a short, almost anecdotal passage, easily dismissed. He wrote that on the coast of Africa, his sickest men, left for dead, had eaten the strange citrus fruits growing there and had miraculously recovered. It is not science. It is not proof. It is a sliver of a hope, a fragile hypothesis in a sea of despair. Clutching the journal, you know you must act. You request another audience with Capitan Almeida. This time, you find him overseeing the rationing of the remaining supplies. Captain, you say, your voice tight with urgency, I believe I may have found a treatment, or at least a possibility. You show him the passage. Citrus fruits. The officer's supply still has a small crate of lemons and oranges. They are preserved for long voyages. I must have them. For the sick. The captain looks from the book to your face, and a flicker of something that might be contempt crosses his features. Lemons? He scoffs, his voice dripping with disbelief. You would have me strip my officers of their private rations for a peasant's remedy found in a dusty book? It is more than a remedy. It could be a cure. You insist, your voice rising. Tiago is dying. Half the crew will follow him. This is the only chance we have. The captain slams the lid of a supply crate shut, the sound cracking through the air like a whip. The men's weakness is a test of their spirit, a trial of their faith. Their fate is in God's hands, Doctor, not in your lemons. He turns his back on you, a final, unyielding dismissal. Defeated, you retreat to the shadows of the deck, your heart a cold, heavy stone in your chest. You watch the sun sink below the horizon, painting the sky in uselessly beautiful shades of orange and red. As darkness falls, a figure approaches you silently. It is Isabella. He is a man of iron, Diogo, she whispers, her voice barely audible over the wind, and iron does not bend. It only breaks. She looks around, ensuring no one is watching. His faith has made him blind. But I will not stand by and watch these men die because of it. She presses something small, round, and cool into your hand. You look down. In the faint starlight, you see it. A lemon. I have access to the officer's stores, she continues, her eyes locked on yours. They will not miss 1 or 2 a day, if I am careful. But if we are caught, you understand the risk she is taking. Theft on a king's ship is a flogging offence. Stealing from an officer's supply is mutiny. The punishment is the rope. Isabella, you cannot. I can, she interrupts, her voice fierce. God gave you a mind to reason with, Diogo. It would be a greater sin not to use it. She gives you a final, determined nod. Meet me by the stern castle after the evening watch. Do not be seen. And so begins the most dangerous gamble of your life. Every night, under the cloak of darkness, you conduct your secret experiment. Isabella slips you a precious lemon, and you retreat to the suffocating confines of your cabin. You carefully squeeze every drop of the sour juice, mixing it with a little water. Under the guise of administering a special herbal tonic to ease their pain, you give the hidden medicine to Tiago and one other gravely ill sailor. They drink it, unaware of the treasonous act of hope they are swallowing. That night, as you listen to the ship groaning around you, you write in your journal, the 15th of December. I have committed a crime. I have defied my captain and placed a trusted friend in mortal danger, all for a theory based on a dead man's scrawled words. Now, I can only watch and wait and pray not to the captain's silent God, but to the fragile science I have staked our lives upon. Every day I check on Tiago, searching his eyes, his skin, his gums, for any sign of change. So far there is nothing, only the slow, steady march of death. The 23rd of December, 1520, a week of secrets, a week of stolen lemons and whispered hopes. In the dim light of your cabin, you think you see a change in Tiago, a flicker of life in his eyes that was not there before. The swelling in his gums seems less. But you are a man of science, and you know how desperately the mind can conjure facts to support a favored theory. The evidence is too slight, the hope too fragile to name. Outside your cabin, the ship has become a floating tomb, filled with the ghosts of sick and dying men. The fear is a physical presence now, as thick and suffocating as the humid air. The night is unnervingly calm. The ship glides through a placid, moonless sea, the only sounds being the creak of the rigging and the soft coughs of the sick below deck. You are on the deck, taking in a breath of air that doesn't taste of sickness and despair when the peace is shattered. It starts with a wild, tormented scream from the forecastle, a sound barely human. Before anyone can react, a pale figure scrambles onto the railing, silhouetted for a heartbeat against the star-dusted horizon. Then, with a final cry, he is gone. A heavy splash echoes in the sudden, shocking silence. Panic erupts. Men shout, running to the side. The watch officer bellows orders, but it is a futile gesture. The ship is moving, and the ocean is a vast, black wilderness. There is no finding a man in such darkness. He is lost. You learn his name was Ramiro, a sailor who had been suffering from a high fever for days. You know in your medical mind that it was delirium that drove him overboard, a brain on fire with illness. But for the rest of the crew, the explanation is far simpler and far more terrifying. The next morning, the ship is shrouded in a fog of dread that has nothing to do with the weather. This is where Piloto Pedro, the old pilot, does his deadliest work. He doesn't shout, he whispers. You see him moving between the huddled, fearful groups of sailors, his voice a low, venomous current. A man does not just jump. You overhear him telling one group, he is called, or he is pushed. The sea claims its own. To another group, he gestures subtly towards your cabin. Ever since the shark, ever since his strange potions and his unnatural meddling, the spirits of this sea have been angered. Ramiro's soul is not at peace. It is still with us. It is looking for company. His words are poison, and they spread fast. The crew's fear, a shapeless entity until now, finally has a face to blame. Yours. The change is immediate and chilling. Men who once sought your help with a cut or a fever now avert their eyes when you approach. You see them making subtle signs with their hands to ward off evil. Your walks on the deck are met with a hostile, impenetrable silence. You ask a sailor a simple question about a rope, and he flinches away as if you had tried to strike him. Isabella can now only speak to you in the briefest of moments, in the deepest of shadows, her face etched with worry. You are utterly, terrifyingly alone. The tension finally snaps. A group of a dozen sailors, their faces gaunt with hunger and fear, corner the first mate. Their spokesman, a burly sailor Pedro has often spoken with, throws a coil of rope to the deck. We work no more, he snarls. This is a cursed voyage. We demand you turn the ship back to Lisbon. Get rid of the curse bringer, the doctor, before we all end up like Ramiro. It is not a request. It is the first tremor of a mutiny. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the standoff, as cold and sharp as a shard of ice. Pick up the rope. Capitan Almeida has appeared, moving with that same deadly quiet. He stands before the ringleader, who is a head taller and broader than him. The sailor hesitates. I said, the captain repeats, his voice dangerously soft. Pick it up. When the sailor still doesn't move, the captain's action is faster than a striking snake. He doesn't draw his sword. He steps forward and smashes the pommel of his dagger into the man's face. There is a sickening crunch of breaking bone and cartilage. The man collapses to the deck, screaming and clutching his ruined nose. The captain stands over the writhing sailor, his eyes sweeping across the terrified faces of the other would-be mutineers. The next man who refuses an order will not be so fortunate, he says, his voice never rising above a calm, menacing tone. This ship is not turning back. We will continue our mission, or we will all die trying. The sea may take you, the sickness may take you, but I assure you, my justice will be swifter than either. Now get back to work. The men scatter, their rebellion instantly crushed, replaced by a more immediate and tangible fear. That night, the only sound is the wind. The silence of the crew is absolute, a silence born of pure terror. You write in your journal, your hand shaking slightly. The captain saved the ship's order today, but he did not save me. He simply aimed the crew's fear back where he wants it. I am the lightning rod for their superstition, a convenient monster to blame for their misery. I am completely alone now. My only hope lies in a stolen fruit and a dying boy. You make your way to Tiago's hammock. In the dim light, you lift his eyelid. His eye seems clearer. You press a finger to his gums. They are still swollen, but when you pull your finger away, you are sure of it. They bleed just a little less than yesterday. The 18th of January, 1521. Victory. It is the only word that comes to mind, yet it feels too small for what has happened. Tiago is on his feet. He is weak. His smile is a shadow of what it once was, but he is alive. The bleeding has stopped. The color is returning to his skin. The other sailor is improving as well. The lemon, that small golden sun, has done what all the captain's prayers could not. It has turned back death. Isabella and you share a secret, triumphant glance across the deck, a bond of treasonous success that no one else can understand. The crew's fear of you has been replaced by a grudging, confused respect. But the ship remains a place of ghosts, and the captain's silence on the matter is heavier than any reprimand. He knows something has changed, but his pride will not let him ask what. The first sign of the new world is not seen, but felt. A change in the air. For weeks, the wind has carried only the clean, sterile scent of salt and distance. But this morning, you catch a new fragrance on the breeze, something rich, loamy, and alive. It is the smell of damp earth, of decaying leaves, of pollen from a million unknown blossoms. You stand at the railing, inhaling deeply, your naturalist's mind racing. This is the scent of a continent. Later, you spot a bird, a flash of impossible blue and emerald green, utterly alien to the gulls and albatrosses of the Atlantic. It circles the mast once, then flies west. You watch it until it is a speck, your heart pounding with a new kind of excitement, hope. Then, hours later, the cry comes from the crow's nest, a cracked, joyous, weeping shout. Terra! Terra a vista! The words are a jolt of electricity through the exhausted vessel. The deck, a moment before quiet with grim routine, erupts. Men who have been hollow shells for months now scramble up the rigging for a better view. They point, they shout, they weep openly. You see Tiago, leaning against the railing, tears streaming down his face. This is the moment they have all prayed for, suffered for, and nearly died for. In the distance, a thin, dark line separates the sea from the sky, a line that slowly thickens into a smudge of deep, vibrant green. As you draw closer over the next day, the raw scale of it becomes apparent. This is not some small, sandy island. This is a vast, formidable coastline, a solid wall of vegetation that seems to rise directly from the sea. There are no welcoming beaches, no signs of harbours or towns. It is a world untouched, primordial. The initial euphoria on the ship begins to temper, replaced by a profound sense of awe and a sliver of newfound fear. The captain, his face an unreadable mask, proves his skill. He guides the caravel along the coast for hours until he finds what he is looking for: a wide, calm river mouth, its water the colour of dark tea, offering a safe passage inland. As you leave the choppy blue of the ocean and enter the smooth, silent water of the river, the world changes completely. The vast, open horizon is gone, replaced by the towering green walls of the jungle on either side. The sounds of the sea, the wind, the waves die away. A new soundscape envelops you, a deafening, multi-layered chorus of unseen life. The screech of birds, the rhythmic chirping of insects, the guttural call of some unknown animal deep within the trees. The air grows thick, humid, and heavy with the scent of flowers and rot. The ship, once a master of the vast ocean, now seems small and fragile, an intruder in this ancient, living cathedral. The crew falls silent. Their boisterous celebration has vanished, replaced by wide-eyed apprehension. They grip the rigging, their gazes scanning the dense, dark trees, searching for any sign of movement. You stand on the deck, a profound question echoing in the oppressive silence. Are you the first civilized men to ever witness this? Is this God's promised land, a new Eden offered as a reward for your suffering? Or have you simply traded one prison for another, sailing from the empty wilderness of the sea into the watchful, waiting wilderness of the jungle? The ship is a trespasser here, and you can't shake the feeling that something in the deep, green darkness is watching you back. The 25th of January, 1521. We have been anchored in this river for a week. The men call it Rio de Cura, the river of healing. The fresh water, the strange sweet fruits, and the succulent meat of the capybaras we hunt have worked a miracle that my medicine could not. The spectre of scurvy has vanished. The crew's health is restored. A fragile optimism has returned. This world is a paradise, a land of impossible colours, of deafeningly vibrant life. It feels pure, untouched by the plagues and politics of Europe. In my quiet moments, you allow yourself to believe we have found a kind of Eden. It is a foolish, scholarly notion. Eden was not made for men like us. The first encounter happens at dawn. A single, long canoe, carved from the trunk of a massive tree, glides out of a tributary. It moves with an eerie silence, propelled by 6 men whose bodies are adorned with intricate red and black paint. They are not fearful, but cautious, their powerful shoulders and steady gaze telling of a people perfectly at home in this world. They watch us, and we watch them, 2 realities staring at each other across a shimmering expanse of water. Captain Almeida, ever the tactician, dictates the terms of contact with rigid precision. A small party, no visible weapons, gifts to show peaceful intent. He chooses you, for your scholarly disposition, Isabella, to document the meeting, and a nervous friar clutching a large wooden cross. The first meeting is a thing of silent wonder. You exchange hawks' bells and mirrors for baskets of fruit and carved idols. For a brief, perfect afternoon, it is a true meeting of worlds. But paradise is a fragile thing. Days later, Gaspar and his mercenaries are allowed to join the shore party to oversee the trade. His eyes, fixed on the natives' small gold ornaments, burn with a triumphant predatory light. The peace is poisoned. The bartering, once a gesture of goodwill, becomes a rapacious exercise in exploitation. The breaking point comes when Gaspar shoves a man aside to grab a golden amulet from his son. A young warrior, desperate to protect the boy, hurls his spear. It flies wide, but the act is done. Now you see their true nature. Gaspar bellows, a justification for the violence he has been craving. He lunges forward, not at the warrior who threw the spear, but at another man, bringing his sword down in a vicious, punishing arc. He does not kill him, but lays open his arm from shoulder to elbow. A collective cry of pain and terror erupts from the tribe. They scramble back, melting into the jungle, leaving their wounded kinsman screaming on the blood-soaked sand. Gaspar's men seized the boy he was after, dragging him back towards the boat as a hostage. The wounded warrior lies on the sandbar, his life pumping out in terrifying surges. Gaspar, wiping his bloody sword on his breeches, laughs. Leave him. The crocodiles can have him. You stand frozen. Before you can even process the horror, Captain Almeida steps forward, his face a mask of cold fury. But his anger is not directed at Gaspar. It is directed at the chaos. He sees his mission, his control, unraveling. He must make a choice. To punish Gaspar is to risk a mutiny from the only men on board who know how to truly fight. To ignore the crime is to turn this river of healing into a river of war. He makes his choice with the cold pragmatism of a commander. Gaspar, he says, his voice like stone. Get your men and the hostage back to the boat. Now. He has chosen order over justice. He will sacrifice this budding relationship for the stability of his command. But the natives do something unexpected. The old chief, his face a mask of grief and fury, barks a command. Two warriors do not flee. They lift their bleeding kinsman, and they begin to walk, slowly, deliberately towards you. The world slows to the beat of your own terrified heart. They are not attacking, they are pleading. They lay the wounded man on the sand directly at your feet. The gash in his arm is horrifying, a deep canyon of flesh from which his lifeblood is pouring. You are a doctor. You know an arterial bleed when you see one. He has minutes. This is your dilemma. Every eye is on you. Gaspar's stare is a physical weight, a silent, deadly threat promising revenge if you interfere. The captain's gaze is a sharp, clear warning. Do not get involved. To your back, the frightened crew watches, wanting only to escape. But at your feet, a man is dying. The words of your oath, sworn in a sunlit hall in Lisbon half a world away, echo in your mind. First, do no harm. You look at the wounded man's eyes, wide with pain and fear. You look at the old chief, who meets your gaze not with a challenge, but with a desperate human appeal. And you make your choice, ignoring Gaspar's snarled, "What in God's name are you doing, doctor?" You drop to your knees in the bloody sand. You rip open your medical kit. Your hands miraculously are steady. You pull out a thick wad of clean linen, your most precious supply, and press it hard into the wound. The man cries out, a raw, agonized sound. "Hold him!" You shout, not to your own men, but to his. The two native warriors understand instantly, pinning the man's shoulders to the ground. You work with a singular, desperate focus. The world shrinks to this single, vital task. You call for Isabella, who rushes to your side with a flask of water. You clean the wound as best you can, your fingers probing the horrific damage. You see the severed artery, pulsing weakly. It is a death sentence. But you pack the wound, bind it with all your strength, creating a brutal, makeshift pressure dressing. It is crude, it is medieval. But it is his only chance. After an eternity, the bleeding slows from a torrent to a sluggish ooze. The man has fallen unconscious, but he is breathing. You have done it. You have saved him. You look up. The air is thick with a new, dangerous tension. The natives are watching you with an expression of stunned, unreadable awe. Gaspar is looking at you with pure, undisguised hatred. And the captain is watching you with an expression you have never seen before, a look that says you have just crossed a line from which there is no return. You stumble back to the boat, the warm, sticky feeling of another man's blood still on your hands. That night, you write in your journal, "I upheld my oath today, but in saving one life, I may have endangered us all. I did not just defy my captain, I defied the simple, brutal law of this expedition, that our lives are worth more than theirs. I chose a man over my own tribe. I do not know if that makes me a healer or a traitor." Excellent. Here is Chapter 8, picking up in the tense moments immediately following your fateful decision on the riverbank. Chapter 8, A Fragile Trust. The 26th of January, 1521. I write this not from my desk, but from the floor of my cabin, where I have been confined since yesterday's events. The door is barred from the outside. I am a prisoner, My crime was not treason, nor mutiny, but an act of medicine, an act of mercy. After I bound the warrior's arm, a tense silence held the world in its grip. The native chief looked at me, a long, unreadable stare, then gave a sharp nod. His men lifted their wounded companion and vanished into the trees as silently as they had appeared. The walk back to the boat was the longest of my life. Gaspar's men flanked me, their hands never straying far from the hilts of their swords. Their hatred was a palpable thing, a heat I could feel on my skin. The captain said nothing, his face carved from stone. He did not order me flogged or put in irons. He simply ordered me locked away. For a day and a night, you are left in solitude. Your world shrinks to the 4 wooden walls of your cabin, and the small, circular porthole that offers a frustratingly limited view of the vibrant world outside. You are brought water and hardtack biscuit by a grim-faced sailor who refuses to meet your eye. Through the hull, you hear the life of the ship continue without you, the changing of the watch, the calls of the officers, the low murmur of the crew. You are surgically removed from the body of the expedition, an undesirable element now under quarantine. You sit with the weight of your choice, replaying the scene on the sandbar again and again, wondering if you saved a man only to condemn yourself. The next morning, the ship's routine is broken by a different kind of commotion. It's not the sound of anger or alarm, but a low buzz of confusion and disbelief. You press your face to the porthole, craning your neck. You can just see it. On the same sandbar where the blood was spilled, a single, large canoe rests. It is filled to the brim with mounds of yellow and purple fruit, yams and woven baskets. But there is no one there. It is an offering, a message. You hear the captain's voice from the deck, sharp and cautious, ordering a party ashore to inspect the gift. A while later, the first mate reports to the captain, his voice loud enough for you to hear through your door. "It is as we saw, Captain. A gift. No traps. There are herbs here as well. Bundles of leaves and roots we have never seen." You hear the captain's grunt, a sound of reluctant acknowledgement. Your action, which he saw as a breach of discipline, has yielded a result his threats could not. A gesture of peace. Later that night, long after the last bells of the evening watch, you hear a faint scratching at your door. The bar is quietly lifted, and the door creaks open. Isabella slips inside, a small lantern in one hand, casting dancing shadows on the walls. She moves with a furtive urgency. "I cannot stay long," she whispers, placing a bundle of dark, fragrant leaves on your small table. "These were in one of the baskets. I thought you should see them." You pick up a leaf, crushing it between your fingers, inhaling its strange, medicinal scent. They understood. You breathe, a wave of relief washing over you. "This is a gesture of gratitude." "It is," she says, her face grim in the lantern light. "But the goodwill of the tribe is not shared by everyone on this ship." She leans closer. "You must be careful, Diogo. I have heard Gaspar talking to his men. He says a doctor who sides with savages is no different from a savage. He said your oath will not stop a knife in the dark, especially when we are at sea again and your skills are less essential. The chill that runs down your spine has nothing to do with the night air. The threat is real. It has a name and a face." "The captain?" you ask. "The captain sees only the mission," she replies, shaking her head. "He will keep you alive as long as you are useful. After that, you are on your own." She places a hand on your arm, her grip surprisingly firm. "You did the right thing. Do not ever doubt that. But the right thing is rarely the safe thing. Be watchful." She slips out as silently as she came, the bar sliding back into place with a soft thud. You are left alone in the darkness, the scent of the strange jungle herbs filling your small prison. You examine the leaves, your scientific curiosity, a small flickering candle against a great darkness. Your choice has built a fragile bridge to a new world, a world that offers healing and knowledge. But that same choice has marked you for death in your own world, this small, violent kingdom of wood and iron. You have won a fragile trust from the natives, but you have earned a fatal enmity from your shipmates. And you wonder which of them will ultimately decide your fate. The 30th of January, 1521. My freedom, when it was returned, came without apology. The bar was lifted from my door, not as an act of pardon, but as a business decision. The captain summoned me to his cabin. He did not offer me a seat. He simply stated that my unique relationship with the natives was now a valuable asset to the expedition. My actions on the sandbar, he explained, were still an act of gross insubordination. However, a useful tool is not to be left rusting in a box. I was no longer a prisoner. I was a key, and he intended to use me to unlock this land's secrets. I am free to walk the decks again, but I have never felt more like a man in chains. The next trading party is a meticulously staged piece of theatre, and you are the lead actor. You are placed at the front of the boat as it is rowed ashore. Gaspar and his men are present, but they stand well back, their hands resting on their swords, a silent, menacing backdrop. The captain's orders were explicit. You are to facilitate the trade. You are to be the face of peace. The natives are waiting. When they see you, a murmur of recognition ripples through them. The old chief steps forward, and beside him stands the warrior whose life you saved. His arm is bound in a poultice of leaves, but he moves it freely. He looks at you and gives a short, formal nod. It is a moment of profound, wordless connection, a validation of the choice you made, and it is a moment the captain immediately exploits. On his signal, 2 sailors walk forward from the boat, leading the hostage boy. The boy is unharmed, clean, and has clearly been fed, but a rope is still loosely tied around his wrist. He is not a guest, he is a pawn. The atmosphere, which had been warming with fragile trust, immediately chills. The captain unrolls a piece of parchment, not a treaty, but a crude drawing of a gold nugget he'd had Isabella prepare. He points to the drawing, then to the chief's remaining gold ornaments, and then, with a slow, deliberate finger, he points to the distant, mist-shrouded mountains. He offers the chief a sharpened steel axe head, a tool of immense power in this Stone Age world, but he does not hand it over. He simply waits. The chief understands. This is not a trade for food. This is a demand for information. His eyes, full of a wisdom you can only guess at, leave the captain and settle on you. It is a look of profound, questioning disappointment. He is asking you, the healer, if this is what your people's peace looks like. You want to look away, to scream that this is not your design, but you are trapped. Your presence here, your silence, is your consent. You are forced to stand there as the price of peace is negotiated. The life of a boy in exchange for the location of their sacred lands. With a heavy heart, the chief takes a stick and kneels. In the damp sand, he etches a crude map, a winding river, a fork, a path that leads into the mountains. As he draws, you feel the invisible bridge of trust you built cracking and groaning under the weight of your captain's ambition. Every line the chief draws is a testament to your betrayal. Isabella, standing nearby, cannot bring herself to sketch this moment. She simply stares at the ground, a silent partner in your shame. The trade is completed. The chief gets his axe head, and the boy is returned to his family. But the warmth is gone. The natives retrieve their boy and melt back into the jungle without a backward glance. The connection is broken. That night, a new energy fills the ship. The crew is buzzing with talk of gold. The captain is studying the crude map, his face illuminated by a single lantern, a look of grim satisfaction in his eyes. He has what he wants. But as you write in your journal, a bitter, acidic taste fills your mouth. You saved one man's life with an act of conscience. But that single act of goodwill has been masterfully twisted into a tool of coercion. You were the key that opened the door, and the captain has now marched his greed right through it. You are no longer a healer, you are an accomplice. And as the ship prepares to weigh anchor and follow the path drawn in the sand, you know you are heading deeper into a wilderness far more dangerous than any jungle. The 5th of February, 1521. We have been pushing our way upriver for a week, following the crude map extorted from the chief. The jungle grows denser, the air heavier, as if we are traveling deeper into the planet's very lungs. The trade continues, but it is a strained, joyless affair. We offer steel, and they offer food and guidance, but the warmth of our first encounter is gone. It is a relationship built on leverage, not trust. They look at us now with a weary caution. the way one looks at a powerful but unpredictable animal. They do not know how right they are. The first sign of the serpent appears during a brief trade for cassava root. It is so small, so insignificant, that you barely register it. A native child, the son of the warrior whose arm you healed, stumbles while carrying a basket. His father steadies him, and you notice the boy is flushed. He lets out a weak, rattling cough. His mother quickly pulls him behind her. Out of your sight. You see a sick child. A common catarrh, a fever that will pass. You have treated 1,000 such coughs in the crowded, damp streets of Lisbon. You feel a momentary pang of clinical pity, but your mind is occupied with cataloguing the new species of heron you saw nesting in the mangroves. You do not give the boy a second thought. It is the most catastrophic mistake of your life. A week passes. After navigating a confusing series of tributaries, the captain orders the ship back to the main settlement to replenish supplies and force the chief to clarify the route. The moment you see the village, you know something is terribly wrong. The usual sounds of children's laughter, the chatter of women, the thud of work are gone. An eerie quiet hangs in the humid air, broken only by a low, mournful chanting and the hacking sound of racking coughs. A thin, greasy smoke, smelling of strange burning herbs, drifts through the trees. You step ashore into a scene of devastation. The village has become a hospice. Dozens of people lie limply in their hammocks, their bodies trembling with fever, their faces slick with sweat. The sickness is everywhere, affecting the very young and the very old, with the most savage ferocity. Their healers move among them, applying poultices and chanting incantations, but their medicine is useless against this invisible enemy. This is not a native illness. This is our illness. The old chief approaches, his face a mask of grief. But it is the shaman who confronts you, his body trembling with a mixture of sorrow and rage. He points a trembling finger, not at the captain, not at Gaspar, but directly at you. He unleashes a torrent of words in his own tongue, the meaning clear through his gestures. He points to the sick and dying children. Then he touches his own chest and makes a motion of something entering, something spreading like a poison. He then points at you and mimics your healing touch on the warrior's arm, but his expression is one of horror. The message is unmistakable. Your touch, once seen as a miracle, is now seen as the source of the plague. They believe you healed one man only to deliver a far more terrible curse upon them all. The trust has not just been broken, it has curdled into a deep and profound hatred. The chief throws the steel axe head, the price of his betrayal, onto the ground at your feet, a gesture of ultimate rejection. Back on the ship, the atmosphere is dangerously tense. The route to the gold is now blocked by a hostile, dying tribe. This is the moment Gaspar has been waiting for. He storms up to the captain on the quarterdeck, his voice loud enough for the entire crew to hear. "I told you so, Captain," he snarls. "This is what comes of treating them with a soft hand. They are weak, treacherous, and they blame us for their own frailties. Now they are dying. In a month, this whole tribe will be ghosts. We must strike now, take what we came for by force, and be done with it. We go in, we take the gold, and we leave this cursed river to its dead." Captain Almeida says nothing, his face grim. Your diplomatic value has evaporated. Your peaceful approach has, in a terrible irony, led to this disaster, and Gaspar's brutal logic is starting to sound like the only option left. Later, in your cabin, the horrifying truth settles upon you, a weight far heavier than any you have ever known. It was not a curse. It was you. The cough you ignored, the common sickness of Europe, is a lethal plague here. Your hands, which stitched a sword wound and offered a piece of fruit, also carried an invisible pestilence. You, the healer, have been the vector. You, the man of science, have been a walking contamination. The serpent in this garden was not Gaspar's greed or the captain's ambition. It was you. And as you listen to the low, angry murmur of the mercenaries preparing their weapons, you realize that in your attempt to save one life, you may have just signed the death warrant for an entire people. The 7th of February, 1521. The ship has become a powder keg, and the air is thick with the scent of a burning fuse. We are anchored in hostile waters, our food supplies dwindling, Our mission a catastrophic failure. Gaspar and his mercenaries move about the deck with a restless, predatory energy, their swords loose in their scabbards. They look at the captain no longer with obedience, but with contempt. They look at you with open hatred. The crew is terrified, caught between the captain's crumbling authority and Gaspar's rising ambition. The ship does not feel like a vessel on a royal mission. It feels like a cage of animals about to tear each other apart. The ultimatum comes at dusk. The old chief appears at the river's edge, but this time he is not alone, nor is he armed for war. He comes as a grandfather, carrying the limp, feverish body of his own grandson. He holds the small boy up for all on the ship to see, a living testament to the plague you have unleashed. His voice carries across the water, a river of grief and rage, in a language you do not understand but whose meaning is terrifyingly clear. He points to the sick child, then to your ship, and then, with a final, absolute gesture, he points downriver, towards the sea. Leave. Be gone from this land you have poisoned. It is not a negotiation. It is a banishment. On the quarterdeck, Gaspar turns to the captain, a vicious, triumphant smirk on his face. There it is, Captain. The time for talking is over. Diplomacy has failed. You will hold your position, Gaspar, the captain warns, his voice tight. Your position has led us to ruin. Gaspar spits back, taking a step forward, his hand dropping to the pommel of his sword. He is no longer asking for permission. My men and I will get what we came for. The crown will have its gold. Before the captain can react, the sky, which has been threatening all day, finally breaks. A torrential rain begins to fall, lashing the deck in thick grey sheets, instantly soaking everything. It is the perfect cover. We go tonight, Gaspar snarls to his men, ignoring the captain completely. We take what they will not give. You watch in horror as the raid prepares. It is a rogue operation, a mutiny of purpose, if not of command. The mercenaries move in the downpour with grim efficiency, checking the priming of their arquebuses under oilcloth sheets, sharpening their daggers. The rest of the crew huddles under the awnings, their faces pale with fear, silent witnesses to the captain's authority dissolving in the rain. You see Isabella by the mainmast, her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. Gaspar and a dozen of his men slip over the side into a longboat, vanishing into the churning black river and the howling darkness. The ship waits. The only sounds are the drumming of the rain and the groaning of the anchor chain. An hour passes, then two. The tension is unbearable. Then, you hear it a single, muffled crack carried on the wind. The flat, ugly sound of an arquebus shot. It is followed by a horrifying chorus of screams, the high-pitched cries of the natives and the guttural shouts of the Portuguese, all blending into a symphony of violence. The return is a nightmare. The longboat emerges from the darkness, a chaotic vision of blood and desperation. They are paddling frantically, arrows sticking out of the boat's hull. They bring the chaos back with them onto the deck. 2 mercenaries are dead, left behind in the mud. 3 more are wounded, one with an arrow in his shoulder, another with a deep gash in his leg. And then you see Gaspar. His men are carrying him, his face a ghastly white in the lantern light. A short, black-feathered arrow is embedded deep in his gut. The native hostage boy is nowhere to be seen. He has escaped in the chaos. The mercenaries carry a few small, heavy sacks, the pitiful price for all this bloodshed. "Doctor," someone bellows, and you are shaken from your horrified trance. You are no longer an observer. You are a combat medic. They lay Gaspar down on the deck, the rain washing the blood from his wound into pink rivers that run between the planks. You kneel beside him, your personal hatred for the man vanishing, replaced by the cold, professional focus of a healer. The wound itself is small, but the area around it is already turning a dark, bruised purple. You know instantly. Poison. You pull the arrow out, but the damage is done. Gaspar looks at you, his eyes wide with a terror you have never seen before. The gold. He gurgles, a trickle of blood appearing at the corner of his mouth. For the king. You look at the wound, then at his face. You have no antidote. You have no knowledge of the jungle's toxins. Your European science is useless here. All you can do is try to make him comfortable as the poison does its work. The storm rages on, mirroring the chaos that has finally consumed your mission. You write in your journal as Gaspar dies a slow, agonizing death in the forecastle. His greed, which drove this entire disaster, has devoured him at last. The pressure cooker has exploded, and we are all scalded by the result. The path of diplomacy is a field of graves. The path of violence is a dead end. We have failed. We are not conquerors. We are not even explorers anymore. We are just survivors. And now, we must flee. The 8th of February, 1521. We did not weigh anchor. We cut the rope. The captain's order was given with a grim finality, a tacit admission of defeat. We fled the Rio de Cura, the river of healing, as if it were the mouth of hell itself. There were no backward glances. The crew, silent and hollow-eyed, simply turned their faces east, towards a home that now feels a lifetime away. We left behind a ravaged village and a dozen of our own dead. This land was not a paradise to be discovered, but a mirror that showed us the monsters we carried within ourselves. The journey home is a floating funeral procession. The ship, once a vessel of grand ambition, is now just a battered container of weary, haunted men. Your primary duty in these first days is a grim one. You are the physician to your greatest enemy. Gaspar lies dying in the suffocating heat of the forecastle, and his end is not swift. The jungle poison is a meticulous torturer. It does not grant the mercy of delirium. It keeps the mind sharp while it dismantles the body. You do what you can, which is almost nothing. You offer him water, you clean his brow, and you document the poison's terrifying progress. The blackening veins, the slow paralysis creeping up his limbs, the agonizing difficulty of each breath. He watches you with a burning, impotent hatred. In his final lucid moments, he doesn't confess or repent. He curses. He curses the natives for their devil's magic. He curses the captain for his hesitation. And most of all, he curses you. The healer, he rasps, a bloody froth on his lips. You, with your soft hands, you brought this curse on us all. He dies before the sun sets on the third day. You perform your duty, stitching his body into a canvas shroud with a cannonball at his feet. The crew gathers for the burial at sea. The captain says a few hollow words from the prayer book. Then, with a slide and a splash, Gaspar is committed to the deep. There is no mourning. There is only a profound, exhausted relief. A few days later, the captain summons you to his cabin. The storm of the jungle is behind you, and the cold, predictable order of his command has returned. He stands before a table where he has laid out the pitiful results of the raid. 3 small sacks of crudely worked gold ornaments. A final accounting, doctor, he says, his voice devoid of emotion. We have lost 12 men since leaving Lisbon. We have expended a fortune in supplies. In return, we have this. He gestures to the gold and the charts of a new river. He looks you directly in the eye. Was it worth it? The question is a trap, and you know it. That is not a question a doctor can answer. Captain, you reply, your voice steady. Only a king or a merchant. A flicker of something not respect, but acknowledgement crosses his face. Indeed, he says. Worth is a calculation for my masters in Lisbon. My duty was to execute the mission and bring this ship home. The log will state that Gaspar and the others died honorably in service to the crown, while repelling an unprovoked attack by savages. That is the only history that will be written. The chasm between your two worlds is absolute and permanent. He sees the world as a logbook, a series of entries to be balanced and closed. You see it as a body, bleeding from wounds that will never truly heal. He dismisses you with a nod, and you leave his cabin for the last time as anything other than a subordinate. You find Isabella on the deck, her back to the wind, putting the final touches on her great map of the new world. She unrolls it for you. It is a masterpiece of cartography, a work of stunning precision and beauty. The coastline, the river, its tributaries all captured with an artist's hand. But as you both look at it, you don't see a map. You see a crime scene. It is a perfect chart, she says softly, her voice tinged with a sadness that mirrors your own, of a place I never want to see again. She points to a spot on the river. Here is where we met them. Here is the sandbar. And here, She taps the location of the village, is where we brought them hell. The knowledge you have gained, the very reason for this voyage, feels like a burden, a spoil of war tainted by the blood spilled to acquire it. The ship sails east. Home is still months away. You have the gold, you have the maps, you have the answer to the deadly riddle of scurvy. By any measure the world will use, the voyage will be declared a success. But you know the truth. You are not returning as a triumphant explorer. You are returning as a carrier of a terrible story. The journey home is no longer a race against death, but a long, slow pilgrimage, a time to reckon with the ghosts you are carrying back with you. Lisbon, October 1521. You are home. A year has passed since you fled the river of ghosts. The journey back was a long, slow purgatory, but you survived. Now, you stand on the solid cobblestones of your city, and yet you have never felt more adrift. The world you left behind feels alien. The clamour of the fish market, the smell of baked bread and sewage, the press of the crowd, it all feels loud, frantic, and suffocatingly small after the profound silence of the jungle and the infinite expanse of the sea. You are a different man, haunted by a world no one here can ever understand. They see a hero, an explorer who has returned with riches and knowledge. You see a ghost, walking in a city that is no longer your own. The setting is a great, sunlit hall at the university, filled with learned men in dark, velvet robes. It is a world of quiet reason and scholarly debate, a universe away from the mud and blood you have just left. Isabella's magnificent charts are unrolled on a massive oak table, drawing murmurs of admiration. They are hailed as a triumph of cartography, a new jewel in the crown of Portugal's empire. The small cache of gold, polished and displayed on a velvet cloth, has satisfied the royal court. You stand before these men, your voice steady as you present your findings. You speak of the new river, the previously unknown flora and fauna, and of your own great discovery, and therefore, you conclude, your voice echoing slightly in the quiet hall. It is my firm medical conclusion that the regular administration of citrus fruit can prevent, and indeed cure, the great plague of the sea we call scurvy. Thousands of lives may be saved by this simple application of natural philosophy. There is a ripple of excited, skeptical debate. It is a revolutionary claim, a medical breakthrough that will change the world. You have delivered the official history, the story of progress, the story of glory. But as you stand there, listening to their questions, your mind is not in this hall. It is adrift in a flood of memories, the true, unwritten log of the voyage. As they praise Isabella's perfect lines on the map, you see her face illuminated by a lightning strike, her eyes wide with terror during the raid. As they pass around a golden amulet, you see not the gleaming metal, but the terrified face of the native boy who was torn from his family, a pawn in a game he never understood. And as they debate the merits of your scurvy cure, you see the dim, desperate light of your cabin, the stolen lemon, a secret sun in your hand, and the near-deadly pale face of young Tiago, trusting you with his last breath. You see the hacking cough of the native child, the accusing, grief-stricken eyes of the old chief, and the horrifying realization that your healing presence was the most lethal weapon of all. You see the captain's cold, pragmatic face, hear Gaspar's dying gurgle, and feel the phantom sensation of another man's blood on your hands. Later that night, you sit alone in your study, the city's sounds muffled by stone walls. You open your journal one last time, the pages filled with the observations of a man who no longer exists. You pick up your quill for the final entry. They are calling the voyage a success. A new river for Portugal, a new cure for mankind. This will be the history that is taught and remembered, the clean, admirable line of progress. But I know there is another history, a second ledger where the costs are recorded. It is a history written in the blood on a sandbar, in the silence of a ravaged village, and in the ghosts we carried home in our hearts. We set out to discover a new world, but we succeeded only in bringing the oldest sins of our own world to its shores: greed, violence, and a pestilence born of our own ignorant touch. What then is the legacy of our journey? Is it the maps that guide future ships? the cure that saves future sailors? Or is it the unwritten story of the lives we shattered and the innocence we lost? Perhaps the true legacy of any great discovery is this dual truth, this terrible paradox, that every bold step forward for mankind leaves a footprint on something pure and trampled in its wake. You put down your quill and look at your hands in the candlelight. They are a doctor's hands, clean and steady, hands that can set a bone, stitch a wound, and chart the course of a disease. But you will see them for the rest of your life, as they were in that moment on the river bank, one hand holding the tools of healing, the other stained by a sin for which there is no absolution. And so, our long and difficult journey with Dr. Diogo comes to a quiet end. History, as we've heard tonight, is often a heavy burden, but it is not yours to carry into your dreams. Let the echoes of the 16th century sea, the creak of the ship's timbers, and the weight of the past all fade away now. Your own long day's voyage is over. Your only mission is to let go and find rest. If our story helped you unwind tonight, a quiet like and subscribe to Sleepy History Studio is always deeply appreciated, as it helps our community of history dreamers grow. Thank you for sharing your quiet hours with me. May your mind be as calm as a windless sea, and may your sleep be deep and peaceful. Until our next story, good night.